Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Sunday School again. My name is Ricky Pitts, and I'll be your Sunday School teacher for today. I'm teaching on behalf of Bishop Nolan T. Torbert, who's the founder, pastor, and overseer of True Deliverance Holiness Church. We have another really good lesson today, and I think all of us at some point that works in the kingdom have felt a call. A call to the choir, a call to a missionary, a call to the ministry, a call to serve as a deacon, a call to serve in the parking lot, a call to serve as a greeter, a call to serve just in the kitchen, a call as the helps to help in any capacity. But then we didn't anticipate the problems that came with the call. You know, we tend to think that because I was called by God, and this is a kingdom activity, that everything should flow just seamlessly. And we forget about we still live in this place called the earth, this fallen place, this place that has people and personalities and preconceived notions and hidden agendas all over it. As a result of that, we're still going to have some different problems, but we still have to heed the call when God calls. And so we're going to jump right into our lesson today, and I'm going to open it up with a few questions before we really get into it. I want to kind of give you an idea of what this whole month, this is going into the fall quarter, is going to be about God's exceptional choice. Unit 1 is God calls Abraham's family. That's going to be lessons 1 through 4, so for the whole month of September. The subject of our lesson today is the call of Abraham, coming from Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 through 5, then verse 7, Genesis chapter 15, verses 1 through 7. And as I mentioned earlier, I want to open up with 3 questions to kind of give us a framework and some dialogue in a real sense. We can't talk online, but just to kind of think about how you would answer these questions here. Number 1, how might believers live in a way that blesses their unbelieving family and friends? That's number 1. Number 2, what is the connection, if any, between obedience to God and the resulting blessings or blessing from Him? And number 3, what circumstances have left you feeling angry or frustrated with God? Not with man, with God. Now I know y'all saying, Ricky, come on now, why did you even ask that? You know, because some of y'all are real deep, you know, and profound. That just ain't no way. But think about it, you know, hit the rewind button in the history of your mind and see when you got upset, when you didn't get your way and got upset and questioned God. So we're going to get into the first part of our lesson, verses in Genesis 12, 1 through 5, and also verse 7, the call announced. So God's declaration. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So Abram departed. We're looking at Abram's response now. So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gathered in Haran. And they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and to the land of Canaan they came. Now we get into the call, affirm, chapter 15. And we see a protection pledge. After these things, the word of the Lord came unto Abraham in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram. I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. Now we see the challenge that's been offered here in verses 2 and 3. And Abram said, Lord God, what would thou give me, seeing I go childless? And the steward of my house is this Eleazar of Damascus. And Abram said, Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir. Now we'll see the promise confirmed. And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought him forth abroad and said, Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. We see righteousness reckoned. And he believed in the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness. And he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees, to give thee this land to inherit it. Now we'll see the call announced. Matter of fact, let's go right into a little commentary here. So I'm gonna pull that down, and we're gonna get right into a little commentary. Now, what I'm gonna cover here is coming right from the International Sunday School commentary that we use going into the 22-23 year, the fall of 22, and then springing into the winter, and of course the year of 2023. It is it's an amazing lesson. And because of the way we're doing our lessons now, I might even go over sometime, because these are pre-recorded in advance, and so it may not be right on 30 minutes. It might be before 30 minutes, where it gets finished a little early sometime, but we intend to go through the whole thing. So in the first part of our lesson, we see God's declaration. And in a culture of what's called polytheism, meaning a whole lot of gods, a whole bunch of them, the act of worshiping the one true and living God, the commentary says, might have been part of the reason that God ordered Abraham to just get out of there. Just leave all your kinfolks, just leave everything, and I'm going to send you to a new land. And in that time, in antiquity, or in an ancient world, a person's identity and their social standing were attached to the family, and they were attached to the ancestry. An inheritance claim and family responsibility was tied to a family lineage. So there's a possibility then that he was leaving what could have been his inheritance. But God has a whole lot more for you than what you might think you have. You might think you're leaving behind, or you might think you're losing. By telling Abram to leave his father's house, God called him to a new identity, not necessarily linking his lineage. And Abram did something. Abram demonstrated or showed that he trusted in the Lord and he believed in the Lord by obeying the word of the Lord in the midst of a whole lot of uncertainties. I want you to read Hebrews chapter 11 and verse number 8. We also see that the childless Abram would go on to become a great nation. Why? Because of God's steadfast love and because of God's promises that never fail. I want you to read Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 7 through 8. And Abram and his descendants were tasked with living among other nations in a way and in a manner that would let their light shine so much that was going to result in blessing both groups. Their group, the people of God, and then those that were in around the other nations. And this is really important because in a way, Abraham and his descendants then were to serve like a kingdom of priests, not for the surrounding areas, but for the whole known world at that time. I want you to read Exodus chapter 19, verses 5 and 6. So then the blessing of Abram included making salvation available to everybody, regardless of their ancestry or their nationality. It was blessed through Abram's seed. I want you to read Galatians chapter 3, verse 26 through 29. So then as Abram and his descendants followed, and not only followed, but obeyed God, there was going to be a real strong witness for the Lord. A witness for God's grace, a witness for God's mercy, a witness for all of God's blessings. And all the families, not some, but all the families of the earth saw the result of believing in and following the one true and living God. And by doing that, by seeing what they were doing, it was going to be such a strong witness. It was going to influence them. Wait a minute now, maybe I should follow the God of Abraham, of Abram, and do what and obey what they said do, or what their God said do, and do what their God said do, so I can get some of these blessings. Because they also knew that those that cursed him, Abram, was also going to be cursed. So Abraham had the Lord on his side. What about us? You know, we have the Lord on our side too. We tend to get real frustrated and aggravated with people and what people say, what people do. Oh, they lied on me, they did this and this, that, and the other. Hey, but we have God on our side. And so don't worry about what man can do, because man don't have a heaven nor a hell to put you in. God has the last say so. And so the next important thing is Abram's response here in verse 4 and 5, the way he responded to this. At age 75, Abram obeyed God, left Haran, and believed that God was going to do what he said he was going to do. Keep his word, keep his promises. And it was also a very honorable thing that Abram did, because he took his nephew Lot along with him. That was nice and that was honorable. But then Lot was going to end up or wound up being a whole lot more trouble than Abram had anticipated. I want you to read Genesis chapter 11, verse 27 and 28. And Genesis chapter 14, verses 1 through 16. Now, we also learned that God called Abram specifically. But Abram went on to take some things with him. He took all of his wealth. He took his extended household, took all of them on the trip with him. I want you to read Genesis chapter 13 and verse 2. And Abram's journey down to Canaan, along with his nephew Lot, and his kinfolks and his extended family, would later on become a very important place for his descendants. I want you to read Genesis chapter 35 and verse 4 and Joshua chapter 24 and verse 25. Then we see God's declaration even more. Abram's obedience not only brought him to a new land, but to a new interaction with the Lord. So as he obeyed the Lord, as he moved and took action and went to a new land, a place he knew nothing about, as he left the familiar place of family and friends and possible inheritance, it brought him to another interaction with the Lord, higher heights and deeper depths. The contents of God's declaration reveals something, reveals a new aspect of the previously given promises. The way Abram was going to become a great nation, the way he was going to have kids like the sand of the sea and the stars of the sky, was not going to be through his helper, not through his servant. It was going to be a biological seed. It was going to be his own biological son of him and Sarah, his seed, and also Canaan land, the land of Canaan. I want you to read Genesis chapter 48 and verse 4. So Abram went on, after hearing his word, he built an altar unto the Lord in response to the words of God. And by building this altar unto the Lord, this really was a public announcement. It publicized the focus of his worship. The focus of his worship was on the one true and living God. And it served as a touchable, tangible reminder that of God's faithfulness, and a tangible reminder of the very presence of God. You see, God, you may not see him every time. You might not feel him all the time. But you best believe that God is always there. He is in all places at all time, beholding both the good, wait a minute, and the evil. I want you to read Exodus chapter 24 and verse 3 and 4. Now we're going to transition to the call being affirmed in the 15th chapter of Genesis chapter 1 through 7. And the first thing I want to talk about is the protection pledge. In verse number 1, the protection pledge, when Abram went where the Lord told him to go, that's what he did, what the Lord told him, he still, wait a minute, had problems. Hold it, Ricky, did you just say when Abram went where the Lord told him to go, he still had problems? Yes, he did. You see, for a while, him and his nephew Lot, they lived in different places until they were finally reunited because Abraham had to go down there and rescue Lot. He done went down there and got in some, so he had to go down there and rescue him from captivity. I want you to read Genesis chapter 13, verses 10 through 18, and chapter 14, verses 11 through 16. Abram went on to meet this real mysterious king called Melchizedek. He was a real, and not only that, when he had conquered and did what he did and won the battle, Abraham gave this guy a tenth, a tithe. And Abram did not want to depend on the wealth of anybody else. He didn't want to, he refused any kind of financial gain from King Melchizedek, which was so mysterious, and some say was a type of Christ. I want you to read Genesis chapter 14, verse 18 to 24. But Abram was so, I guess I call it dogmatic. I don't want nobody to give me nothing, because when it all comes down, when the final analysis, the final result, you gonna say you did it, and I got what I got because of you, and you ain't. Well, I got what I have because of the Lord. We ain't gonna go there. We ain't gonna even take that chance. Is the mindset that Abram had, and he believed that the Lord was his exceeding great reward. The question is, do we believe that the Lord is our exceeding and great reward, even in a very dangerous new land? God promised Abraham to be his shield. I'm going to be your shield. I'm going to be your care and your protection for you and for your people. And then after all this, we said all this stuff that had happened, all this rigmarole, the Lord came to him and talked to him again, appeared to him again. I want you to read 2 Samuel 22 and 3, and also verse 31, and also Psalms chapter 3 and verse 3. We also see in verse 2 and 3 the words of Abraham. And the words of Abraham, the way he responded, indicates something, that Abraham was very aware of what the Lord had told him he was going to happen through him. He was very aware that the Lord had told him a great nation was going to come as a result of him. He's an old man. He's old up in age now, but he was aware of the promise of God. I want you to read Genesis chapter 12 and verse 2. But wait a minute, Ricky. At this point in this man's life, Abram is 100 years old. And his wife, Sarai is 90 years old. Listen, at 100 years old and 90 years old, ain't nothing too much working. Okay, I'm just say, but so he understood that. He understood that the clock. My goodness, I want you to read Genesis chapter 12 and verse 4, and chapter 17 and verse 17. So the question then is, I'm 100, she's 90. How is this gonna happen? So then Abram started getting logical at this point, and being what we call it, realistically optimistic but realistic. I'm 100, she's 90. What's going on? How in the world? But transferring the rights to his steward Eleazar would have been the last, maybe logical resort to ensure that Abram's legacy would continue. And this was not an unusual thing in the history of Abram's descendants. You know, you heard about Esau and Jacob and all them boys, and what them two boys, what they did. I want you to read Genesis chapter 25 and 31 through 33. Where Esau sold his for little or nothing. You read about it in Genesis. So the ancient adoption or antiquity adoption practices allowed for a childless couple to adopt a grown man, as a household servant or steward. And this man right here was going to take care of that couple in the old age. And this man right here was going to make sure they had proper burial and a good burial place. And as a result, this man was going to get everything that the family had, going to get the family property. And this would allow then, in a real sense, for the heir, the continuation of the heir and the family line. So this was really then a business contract between grown folk, a contract between these adults. So then we see in 4 and 5, the promise was confirmed. So the Lord, y'all know the Lord knows everything. The Lord can see everything. The Lord can know our mind. He knows our thoughts before we think them. So in response to Abram's, his name ain't changed yet, Abram's frustration, the Lord spoke with him and gave him another assurance, another declaration that boy is going to come from you and Sarah. That's going to be your seed, biological. That's going to be your boy. Going to come from your bowels. So and look at this. God always keeps his promises, class. Now his time may not be your time, but he always on time. Let me say that again. His time might not be your time, but he's always on time. May not come when you want him to come, but ain't he always on time? And so then we see the assertion that Abram's descendants was going to be as numerous as the stars. And this promise is very widespread in the Word of God. I want you to read very widespread. I want you to read Genesis chapter 22 and verse 17. So then the Lord did something for Abram. The Lord reaffirmed. The Lord didn't, hit him upside the head and punish him and said, boy, then I tell you what. The Lord reaffirmed his promises to him. He didn't bring Abram this far to leave him. No. So Abram then could trust and believe that God was going to keep his word. And you look at verse 6 and 7, we see that righteousness is reckoned in verse 6 and 7. So the text then utilizes an accounting CPA type metaphor. God counted Abram's faith as the foundation for his righteousness. And we read in our commentary that the underlining Hebrew verb has the idea of something or someone as having certain characteristics that they might not really have for real. I want you to read Genesis 31 and 15 and Proverbs 17 and 28. But Abram's faith was enough for God to consider him in right standings. Abraham had that childlike faith. And that faith was enough for God to say, all right, I'm going to count you as all right. I'm going to count you as righteous. And then for the Apostle Paul, this verse right here gave some background to the nature of salvation. I want you to read Romans chapter 4, verse 1 through 8, and also verse 13 and through 15 and verse 22. So Romans chapter 4, verse 1 through 8, verse 13 through 15, and verse 22. So people then who showcase, who demonstrate the faith in God are considered children of Abraham. Regardless of your ancestry, regardless whether you are a full-blooded Jew, no. Don't have to be a Jew. If you're righteous and you do demonstrate faith, believe in the Lord and his death, burial, and resurrection, and you show that faith, we are children of Abraham, regardless of your ancestry. I want you to read Galatians chapter 3, verses 7 through 9. So James go on to inform us that not only was that the only thing about Abraham, he wasn't just counted righteous, but Abraham was also called the friend of God. You read about it in James chapter 2 and verse 23. Abram could be encouraged. You know why? Because the one who would declare himself, I am, was guiding him. Read Exodus chapter 3 and verse 14. Who should I tell him that sent me, Lord? Tell him I am. Y'all know what I am is. He is, I am, whatever I am need us to be, I am is it. I am a strong tower. I am a father when your father's gone. I am a mother when your mother's gone. I am a defense attorney. I am a doctor. I'm a lawyer in the courtroom. I am whatever he needs us to be. Hey, listen to that class. Hey, class, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. So now we got to bring this, we're going to bring this thing on to a close there now. But it's important that all of us know that anytime the Lord is calling us to higher ground, and now we talked about the last few weeks, New Jerusalem, which is the highest of highs. We talked about that place of New Jerusalem and the environment of that place of New Jerusalem. And ain't no more thieves and robbers. We talk about all the 12 gates and the pearls and the streets of gold and the tree that sits on both sides of the street that bears 12 manner of fruit. We talked about all of the peace and tranquility there, the love and happiness and joy and peace in that new city. But now we're talking about down here on earth. Sometimes he's going to call you to another place. The question is, will you be really ready and willing to go? And you know, when the Lord call you to another place, he's going to always call and qualify, and he'll give you the presence and gives you the patience and gives you the grace to get through to the other side. Now, it ain't gonna be easy. And I think sometimes that's where a child of God miss it. They said, the Lord done called me to go here or to do that or to take this job or to change careers. The Lord has called me to a high place in ministry, in my vocation or occupation. And as soon as they get up in there and get to dealing with all of the changes and all of the personalities and all of the demands of that time and all of the necessary paradigm shifts, they said, Lord, you reckon you don't, are you sure you called me over here? You see, it ain't going to be easy. You're going to have to deal with that boy called Lot, that and all this here going on. That's going to go down there and get in all kind of trouble and running folks doing all kind of things that's contrary and get caught up. You got to go get him out. You're going to deal with a lot of kin folks that leave the rail. You're going to deal with employees that's going to do things all out of compliance. You're going to deal with church members that's going to sing in the choir on Sunday morning and they're going to shake it to the left and shake it to the right on Saturday night. All right? They letting some shine, but they ain't letting no light shine, okay? And you got to still pray for you still got to pray for them. You got to marry the dead, bury the dead. You got to still lay hands on the sick so they can recover. If the Lord's going to call you to another level, anybody to the next level, whether it be spiritual occupation or vocation or natural occupation or career move, hey, listen, it ain't going to be easy. We still live on this place called Earth, this fallen humanity, where folks still lie down here. Folks still don't do what they say they're going to do. You got to be able to navigate and get through those troubled waters and know that Jesus is on board. And he's able to say he can say, peace be still. 3 words. But we got to believe. Is he calling you higher class? Is he calling you to another place, a high land? Well, get ready. It ain't going to be easy, but if he call you, it's sure enough going to be worth it. Hey, look, y'all have a great rest of the week. We'll look forward to seeing you again next week, same place for our Sunday school lesson and Sunday school review. Take care.